Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? This is Owen Knight, the working team captain, and I'm here live with CCP Podcasting. So whatever you're doing, stop what you're doing, hit the like button, and tune in. If you don't like our opinion, who cares? If you like our opinion, like, share, and follow. And just remember, all work is easy work. Now get your lazy ass up and get to work.
Podcasting. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Bell. I am Chris Page. That's John Cable, and I believe I fucked up our name right off the bat. It's Beyond the Bell, not Behind the Bell. When we do Behind the Curtain, you know what? I'm gonna leave it in too, just to show that I'm not perfect and I make mistakes. I'm Chris Page. That's John Cable. What's going on, man? How are you?
Enjoying myself watching you screw this up already. It's fabulous.
Yeah, well, the wheels have already come off. We're going for a bumpy ride.
It's going to be great.
Oh, it's going to be fun. These always are. I enjoy doing these shows that just kind of took off out of nowhere. And actually, our guest today is somebody that is over in the UK. How I came across them by sheer chance. We're doing a stream on Twitch, and I think I even called you afterwards, John. I was like, what the hell's a raid? Mm-hmm. You know, because again, I'm not tech savvy.
I remember that phone call.
I don't know anything about it. I just keep rolling with the punches. And ultimately, you explained to me what it was, but our guest is the first person to raid our channel. But ever since then, he's kind of popped in on our Sunday afternoon shows, Wrestling Request Live, where I got an opportunity to show some of his matches and see some of his work. He's got his own Twitch channel, which we'll get into all that and throughout the show, and is just really kind of making some waves over on the UK indie scene. He's the leader of the Violent Gentleman Society, which we'll talk about, and he's got just he's a real interesting person. I enjoy my conversations with him, and now everybody will get to enjoy a conversation with him, because coming in on the show right now, we've got the one and only Mr. Tommy Jackson. What's going on, man? How are you?
Fine, gents. How are you?
We're making it, trying to get through this without, starting over again. But other than that, we'll peek behind the curtain.
We will get there.
It's good to talk to you. I know, obviously, as I said at the top of it, as part of your intro, you kind of stumbled into my life on Twitch, and ever since then, we've had some real cordial conversations. I've kind of tried to get in on some of your streams when I could, or when I can now, and when this opportunity for us on this channel to really try to make a go of talking to independent guys across the world, one of the first people that came to my mind was you, and I was like, well, he's already in the server. I've already got a discourse with him, so. And John, when he and I were discussing our program and kind of how we wanted to attack it, I think we did the Red Shaw show, we did the Katie Trey show, and the Frankie the Mobster show, and I was like, Tommy, I need to talk to him, because we'll get into it in just a little bit. When I see you in the ring and I see your heel work, there are some things about it that I'm just like, oh, this guy makes me want to punch him in the face. But there's just so many little different nuances. How are you doing? And thank you again for taking some time to talk to us today.
No, honestly, it's a pleasure, gents. As I say, it's a great opportunity to sort of sit down and have a proper chat with you and sort of show, talk a bit about me, which is never an easy thing to do, especially in a positive light, because we're always, we always like to see the bad in things. But I think, as I say, it's a pleasure is all mine, and honestly, it's great to be here.
Well, let's get started. We usually have a very organic flow with things, but to get things kicked off, we got the typical softball questions here, softball questions there to kick off the conversation. When it comes to professional wrestling, when did you get bit by the wrestling bug? Like, what part of what was your first anything? What drew you in as a fan, and then what made you really pursue it with getting into the industry?
Well, there's sort of two parts to this. So the first, earliest memory I have of wrestling was when we used to have a channel in the UK called Sky One, and they used to have Superstars for free on a Saturday morning, and I was always drawn into just the characters. Like, it was always something that, you know, it was the overtop, it was the colours, it was things like that. And again, I don't know an exact age, but I must have probably only been probably 5 or 6 maybe when I first sort of saw Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Jake the Snake, and it was actually Jake the Snake who was my favourite. And I was very fortunate. Well, I don't know if the word's fortunate actually, because it was when he was in quite a bad way. But I lived in a town, and they had one of the local wrestling shows on when I was probably about 12, and Jake the Snake Roberts was there, and I was like, wow, this is, you know, I get to meet Jake the Snake, and he wrestled against this guy, and it was all cool and stuff, and he hit his DDT, and then he just lay there for possibly 5 minutes, just passed out in the middle of the ring.
Oh, no.
And then covered him and still got the win. But again, it was one of those things that it was kind of surreal being in, you know, the same room as Jake the Snake Roberts and stuff. And then that channel sort of got decommissioned or went onto cable, as it was back then. So I didn't really get a chance to watch it. And then it was when I was about sort of maybe 9 or 10, my auntie had cable, and she used to tape Monday Night Raw for me weekly, and then drop it off at our house every Tuesday. So I'd always be catching up with it. But yeah, I was definitely an Attitude Era kid. I think I was sort of really into it at that point. And as far as like pursuing being a wrestler, I've watched wrestling pretty much my entire life, but it wasn't really ever something I ever thought I'd do, because I just didn't know how to, you know, do that. And I decided, bearing in mind, after I got married, after I'd had 2 kids, I'm going to pursue wrestling, which is nuts for me.
That sounds crazy to think about it like
yeah.
that. It's like, wow, you did it in the opposite direction. Okay.
Backwards. Yeah, very backwards. And it was only because, so I'll go through sort of the stages of it. So it was, my youngest son has a condition called haemophilia, which is a blood clotting disorder, where his blood doesn't clot normally. So me and my wife decided to make a clothing line, and one of my friends, Brian Aidenson, who was wrestling at the time, we endorsed him with some shirts. Obviously it gives raises money for the charity, and he gets to wear some branded stuff. You know, that was kind of it. And we got invited down by our local town promotion to basically sell some shirts at the venue, raise some money, that kind of thing. And I was just speaking to the trainer there, and he said, well, if you ever, you know, fancy coming down and giving it a go, this is when we train, this is how much it is, etc. And that was basically how I started.
Oh, John, he teed you up for training.
He sure did. He sure did. So I understand that intrinsically. Like, you get that first show thing, or you go to a show and you see something that's just, it connects you. And with you, the connection was the charity work that the company was allowing you to do. How do you transition from I'm selling shirts on a table to raise money to I'm going to get in the ring and be a talent? What was the logic there? How'd that transition happen?
Well, so after that night, I had to sit down with my wife, and I basically said, I feel like I could do this. I think I know enough about the business and the creative process that the business goes through, how to build stories and things like that, that feel like I could do this quite well. And so I went across, and it was a mat session, my first session, so it was no in-ring stuff, it was just purely drills, conditioning, and that was it. We started off with a 10 up, 10 down, so that's 10 squats, 10 press-ups, 9 squats, 9 press-ups, 8 squats, work your way down. then we did some quite intense cardio kind of stuff where we had like a heavy bag, we'd drop it, drop down, jump over it, back down. Just sort of pure conditioning
Body
stuff.
drills?
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, I'll be honest, I probably hadn't worked out in 2 years. So I had no right being in that room at that time. And then we finished with 50 squats to end the session as a group. So that was kind of cool because it was everyone pushes everyone on, and when you're in that kind of mind frame where you just don't think you can push through, and then you've got 6, 7, 8 other guys around you and girls, you know, who are really pushing you through to get through to those last couple of squats, it really, really helps. For the preceding week, I had to walk downstairs backwards or on my ass, which was kind of fun to do. Even things like sitting on the toilet was not fun to do. It was, yeah, there was a lot of things post that I thought, oh, this is going to be tough. But I guess the biggest takeaway was I went back the next week, and I feel like that once you can push through that first session, if you go back, despite being in all the pain and having all that difficulty, you go, okay, I feel like I can do this.
I remember, so yeah, you're talking squats and all that jazz. I remember well, I guess it was week 2 ropes training for me. When I was training, I was 17. My dad consented for me. Over here in the States, you have to be 18. And I remember, you talk about, you know, having difficulties. Buddy, after my ropes training, I went home with bruises across my body. It looked like I had been strapped by like Vader or some shit. Yeah. It was absolutely nuts. And I was cringing. I couldn't even cough because I would, it was bad. The biggest misconception, guys, if you've never gotten into a ring before, you ever thought about getting into, it's more than just stepping into the ring. There's a lot.
There's a lot of different aspects.
But what is cool hearing you talk about it, it's actually, and even to this day, the guys that I went through training with, I still have a camaraderie with to this day. Because, you know, you start with, I don't know, with your class, we started with like 13, and I think only 4 made it through to the end. But to those 4 guys, or the 3 guys and 1 girl, I still keep in touch with to this day. We still have like this camaraderie with it. Is it that way over there as well? Do you still kind of keep in touch with some of the guys and gals that you finished out with?
Yeah, I've noticed as well that a lot of the schools in the US, they do like courses, don't they? So it's like you pay for a set amount of sessions and you go through like weeks of training, or even just like a 2-week stint. So you'll fly to a state, go to their school for 2 weeks, fly home. You'll fly to another state, you go to another school.
That is a more, I guess, commercial aspect of a lot of the training academies here in the States, is that is kind of the way that works. It was different for me. I got into an indie and trained with the indie, and that my training went on for years and years. Just inside the company that I worked for. So it was a different kind of thing.
And that's similar to sort of how we started. So we had a training school based just in the town over from where I am, and again, the UK being a sort of, and I mean town, it's like 2 miles away. Like, it's not like you have to travel hundreds of miles like you do in the US going from one place to another. It was literally, there's a bridge that divides my town and the next town over. You literally go over the bridge, hit a motorway, come off, you're there. Like, it was easy access. And it was one of those things that I knew it was there, but again, because of life, I just never decided to pursue it. I was a musician in my teens up until my sort of mid-20s. Then I got married, had kids. That falls by the wayside. Obviously, you need to work and stuff like that. And it was only when I had got in that position that I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a go, because if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And that was where I felt like, right, I've got to do this now.
When by then you had already felt the starving artist syndrome of being a musician too, so you kind of understood what was going to go into that.
At what point? How old?
not the pain as much, I guess, but and less alcohol. But it's the alcohol comes after matches. But I think being on stage definitely gave me a platform to build on. Of being in front of an audience and stuff like that, and not really sort of worrying about their reactions and what they're thinking. I've just got to focus on what I do to make them think about the reactions.
Right.
Yeah, you kind of come in with a leg up as far as that's concerned. The big piece of it is getting through training. But then, there's a lot of guys and gals out there that don't think, well, have you ever been in front of a crowd before? That's a whole nother beast and a whole nother animal.
And a whole other thing, yeah.
And you coming in, I feel like that would be a huge kind of advantage for you, and that's awesome to hear.
I think, as I say, that's definitely one thing that a lot of people don't take into account. Now, you can go into a training school and be the most technical wrestler in the world. You can literally be built to do 5-star matches, but if you don't have that connection with the crowd, they will not connect with you, and they won't care if you can put a wrist lock on and then transition into something else and into something else and something else. If you don't show the emotion of why you're doing those moves, they will not give a shit.
No, 100% agree with that. What so in your training stuff, what where you said you had a background on a stage being a musician and kind of the way to work a crowd and had been used to being in front of a crowd, so that was probably something that was a real easy transition for you. What was something in the training that wasn't an easy transition? Maybe something that was really hard to grasp for you as becoming a wrestler. Like what was the thing for you that you struggled with the most in training?
I don't think the crowd work, again, despite being in front of a crowd, I don't think that was easy at first because you're so focused on what you're doing in the ring and you don't want to mess up. I think that does come with time. I don't think you can train that either. I feel like you just have to experience it and build from that experience of what works and what doesn't. I think the biggest challenge I had, and it's working the left side initially, everything on the left, like taking the wrist on the left.
Oh yeah,
everything working, everything left-sided, and I was like, hang on a minute, this doesn't feel natural because I'm right-handed. So it was always that initial putting your left foot forward, doing that kind of thing, and that was initially I was like, well, okay, I'll work on this. The pain, obviously, at first, is a big sort of speed bump to overcome. I think you can condition yourself to a degree, and the bumps I take now, sort of 4 years in, are nowhere near as bad as what they felt when you first do them. But I think it's just piecing matches together as well. Initially, even now, I struggle in certain aspects, and again, I've been doing it nearly 4 years, but I feel like it's understanding why you're putting things in certain positions in matches and things like that was a definite big struggle at first, and understanding the breakdowns. Again, I'm sure we're completely going behind the curtain here, so it's how do you have a fast start, do you have a tech start, do you have a bit of a cold start where you let the crowd build? Okay, are we going to start with some tech? Okay, where's the cutoff going to be? Where are we going to start the heat? Where's the comeback going? And again, you have that sort of 5-stage match plan on every match, but it's not about, because every book is made up of paper, but it's what's inside the paper that makes it an important book, and that for me is how you've just got to make sure that the content of the book has a nice beginning, middle, of an end, and that end can have a twist. It can have an ending you see coming. Is it an instruction manual? Is it a Bible? Is it there's so many different things that you can do within on that paper, and it's just how you write it down. And that for me was initially, I was like, okay, are my matches too tight because they're A to B?
Right.
But how do we get to A to Z? And it's that's the thing, is just building on what the foundations of what every wrestling match is built on.
Do you find that the younger talent that you work has a harder time getting that down pat, or do you find that the vets that maybe you work are just so used to doing it that they don't understand the struggle for that?
Yeah. I think a lot of the time, especially with, I wouldn't even say so much the younger talent, because I think the two of the guys who, no, in fact, all of the guys actually in VGS are younger than me. But for example, two of them are extremely younger than me. So, but they are in ring, they surpass me in every way. And they understand the business. They've been doing it a lot longer than me as well. They're the guys who started it when they were 12, 13 and
Right.
really, really pushed on from there. So I would say sort of for first timers, I think the biggest thing is not being afraid to hurt someone. And I know that sounds really counterproductive,
No,
but I think the biggest thing is just letting yourself go a little bit and being like, okay, this is going to hurt, and you need to be able to make it look like it's hurting whilst protecting them at the same time. And it's just building that confidence to believe in the punch that you're throwing looks real, the kick that you're doing looks real, and it looks like it hurts. I think that's the biggest barrier to break, where a lot of the time I trained with I trained with my best friend at the time. So if I punched him in the chin, tough shit. You know, shit happens, you know, and I was very
one of the
relaxed.
easy things for me. When I came into the business, I had already been a bouncer and a cage fighter, so getting hit in the face for me was standard business. So
It's easy, yeah.
It was easy part for me to figure out how to work and how to sell getting hit, because I just let him hit me.
Lay it in. You'd be like Gypsy Joe.
Like,
hit me harder.
Well, in our indie too, like the fans were only 5 feet off of our apron. Like there wasn't any room for a fake throw. There wasn't any room for a feint. We were getting hit constantly, and that made it real easy for me. And the pain aspect of it was like I came from cage fights and bouncing, so it didn't shock me to get punched in the mouth. What shocked me was when the fans actually reacted to it. That was the part that was like, oh, they like that. Do it again.
It's an adrenaline sport. I mean, it really is. And
Yes.
I mean, there's no feeling in the world that's like it unless you've had to be there, and you got to be in the moment, right? And crowd engagement is something that in your game I think that you do pretty well. I really enjoy your heel work when I see you working your matches. You take it's almost like you can with me. I can almost tell when someone tries too hard, right? Like if somebody goes out of their way to try too hard to be a dick or a douchebag. When you're in the ring, you have little subtle things that you do, whether it's playing with the crowd or doing something to the crowd or negotiating behind the referee's back. Your tactics are good, and it's one of those situations to where it makes me want to ask.
What I'm trying to say is that you're naturally an asshole, and it's congratulations.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Well, I mean, we smell our own. I don't know what to tell you. I was going to swing it around into my questions. When you're going through your training, when you're trying to figure out who Tommy Jackson is, did you ever have did you have that conversation with yourself as far as like, am I going to try and be the good guy, or did you always did you know you wanted to be the heel, that you wanted to be the villain?
Well, the Tommy Jackson of pre-COVID and the Tommy Jackson of post-COVID are two completely different people. And I mean in every aspect of what I was doing. So when I first started training, strong style was the big thing at the time. It was starting to really, really push through with New Japan, even British strong style, like the Progress Wrestling over in the UK, was really, really pushing that kind of wrestling. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go down that route. I had kickboxing training when I was younger, and I understand how the mechanics of how to throw a kick and things like that. And so I went down that route, and I found myself sort of I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't me. And I found myself gravitating towards the more brawler style because, again, being 6'2" and nearly sort of 17 stone, it was one of those things that I felt the strong style thing for me was never going to work. I'm trying to, sort of wrestle these guys who are maybe even sometimes nearly a foot shorter than me, and I'm trying to be technical and throw these kicks and stuff. I should just be mushing them in the face and throwing them around. You know, it just doesn't. It wasn't me. So the first sort of, I was training, I think 9 months up until COVID hit, and I was just starting to find my rhythm, and I was really starting to, you know, put my matches together and really starting to showcase myself. And again, the Tommy Jackson of even sort of early, when COVID ended and we were starting to be able to go back to shows, the Tommy Jackson even I was then to now is a completely different person. It's a different character. There's a lot of different moving parts, and I think that you have to move with the times and also not rely on outside sort of sources, and just focus on what you want to do rather than what the crowd wants you to be, and don't just follow the herd, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does.
And again, go on.
No, absolutely. You go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, is it, like, going into, you wanted me to go into more specifics around who Tommy Jackson is and
well, really, what the thought process was into how you created the worker character that you built, and like you said, the transition from COVID to post-COVID. I know you mentioned off air that was a big deal for you guys. Like, what was really around the world, it changed the industry. It changed a lot of industries, but wrestling definitely had to adapt to a different kind of thing. What did the scene look like before and after, and how did that really change for you guys?
Well, I feel like for me, it's changed a lot for a lot of different reasons. The first reason being is that prior to COVID, I only wrestled for my training school. I didn't have any outside bookings whatsoever. I wasn't working any shows apart from those school shows. That's literally it. They were twice a month in across 2 towns, and that was it. COVID hit, and then Speaking Out happened. So I'm not sure how much you guys have seen over in the States, but I know it did impact some workers in the States. And as a result of Speaking Out, our school closed. So there was a lot of things up in the air. And would I go back to wrestling? It felt to me like it was one of those things of like, I've just started getting going, this has happened, do I continue? Because it felt like it was like, is this meant to be? You know, felt like the world was against me in that aspect. But again, I was doing the strong style thing and all that stuff, and again, I just decided that when wrestling comes back, I'm going to go in a completely different direction, use more of my size, be a little bit more aggressive, and it sort of stemmed from, we were watching a series, me and my wife, during COVID, of a series called Hollywood. And it was based in the noir era of Hollywood and actors trying to make it after the war and that kind of thing. And I was going to go in the direction of this sort of smarmy Hollywood 40s actor with the slicked hair, and I'm glad I didn't do that anymore because I've shaved my head, so that's not an option anymore. And you know, the suits and all that, and just I'm better than you, and it was very much a mix probably between MJF and Tony Storm's characters now. That was the kind of thing I was going to go for. Then I reached out to the guys in VGS who were the initial 3 to discuss the Violent Gentleman Society. So the Violent Gentleman name was just, I wanted something to sort of, I think it's an oxymoron where, you know, it means one thing but the opposite, and you know, you can't be
you can absolutely be a gentleman and violent all in the same time.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Have you met John? In case you haven't, there he is.
Yeah. It just feels like, to me, it was one of those things that you wouldn't associate those 2 words together. You know, it's not an everyday saying. You wouldn't say, oh, that gentleman over there is violent. You know, it doesn't make sense. So I thought, that works. Let's go with that. And the name Tommy Jackson comes from my 2 sons. So I have a son called Thomas and a son called Jack, and it's Thomas, Jack, son. and that's where that comes from.
I love that.
So it was just it just seemed to fit, and I was like, it pays homage to them, and as I say, it just felt right at the time, and I thought, I've done the face stuff.
That's worth it, and that means something to you.
Exactly. And it's not just a throwaway name. It actually means something.
It's not just a brand. It's a thing. It exists for
you.
I love that.
Exactly. And I just felt like it just fit what I needed. And as I say, I'm sure we'll go into the VGS stuff very, very shortly, so I won't divulge too much into that.
I'm very interested in that too.
Oh,
that's right up my alley.
Well, I guess actually, I mean, it kind of where we're headed to is the VGS. But before we get there, along the way, like as you, I guess what I'm going to try and ask you is, once you got out of training and you know your school closed down, what was it like for you to navigate the waters over there amongst other independent organizations to get bookings? Like, I mean, were you hitting pavement? Were you putting feet on the pavement? Were you sending out reels? Like, what was the grind looking like to get the ball rolling once your school closed? If you were just doing your shows there and not necessarily branching out, how did you take control of that? And what did that look like to you?
Well, creatively, I started putting together some sort of reels and stuff just to sort of highlight, again, the character direction I was going in. I did that over the existing footage that I had from the school that wasn't deleted, because, again, the guy who closed the school deleted 90% of our footage, so it was a bit of a dick move, but again, it was one of those things that, again, I had enough of it backed up to be able to make some form of promo footage and just something to put it together. The biggest thing again was the fact that the character I was running before this didn't fit the direction I was going in, so then I had to again film some other stuff, and it was quite basic because I didn't have a lot of editing experience, and it was. I was fortunate enough that again, I'm just outside the city of Liverpool in the UK. And Zach Gibson and James Drake, grizzled young veterans, if you're aware of them.
Yep.
I just saw a really good match that they had the other night
with ABC again. They had a school just outside of Liverpool, so again, the fact that my other school closed, I went over there, trained with them for a couple of months before they flew back to the States with WWE. So again, it was a great experience for me. Gave me a new sort of added knowledge that I never had before, and then I just started reaching out to local companies who I already had on a list of things that I wanted to do, likes of Wrestle Island, and they had not an open ring, but it was more like they had an open air show at a carnival, and they said, come down, we'll give you a shot, and I actually wrestled a lady called Harley Hudson, who has just won the gut check over here for TNA. So she's going to be flying out to Canada in, I think, the next couple of months to go and start training over there with TNA. So now Harley Hudson is known as the 9 stone of Scouse girl power. So she's literally 5 foot something, like half my size, and we put on a match that I think the crowd could really resonate with, because I was going in there, throwing her around, being really nasty to her. She obviously, give a nice big comeback, and it was all, it was for a non-wrestling crowd, because it is an outdoor carnival. They really got into it, and I think that gave me my first chance to work as a heel. Yeah, exactly. It
are notoriously some of the shows that have to work. You never know what the crowd's going to do with it.
Exactly. And I think we got the biggest reaction of the day because, again, I'm twice her size and I'm throwing her around. And, we gave her that big baby face sort of push. And then I cut her off, scratched her eyes, choked her out. Crowd weren't happy. But, again, it was the first sort of chance I had to work as a heel. From that moment, the owner of Wrestle Island was like, come down, and I basically just said, oh, by the way, if you're taking me, are you interested in this? And that's when I pitched VGS to him.
Nice.
Let's dive into it.
So how did
I was about to say
I was about to say, like, how did that conversation go? Like, how does it go from so you're interested in me? Well, I got this whole group. Are you interested in this whole thing? Like, what's going on? So let's talk about that now and dive into that some, because I'm real interested to know about how the faction works and how you guys got in together and like and really like how did that build?
Yeah, so it was again during COVID. I pitched the idea of VGS to Christy and KC. So Christy Quinlan is, well, at the time I think he was 17, I think, and KC was low 20s, 22, 23 maybe. And I was training with them at the old school, and I just felt like that, because they've been wrestling for, I think, 10 plus years, both of them. So I just felt like I'm getting this push or getting this opportunity. Let me help these guys along too, because I knew how talented they were, and they weren't really getting that opportunity as well. They were mainly working, again, just our school shows, or it was the odd appearance at different shows and things. I think Casey had actually worked Wrestle Island once before COVID, but Christy had never been given that opportunity. So I just pitched it to him. I said, listen, this is the idea. I come in as the leader, and we have Casey, who again already had a tag team partner at Wrestle Island that he was supposed to go and tag with, and bringing Christy. So our debut at Wrestle Island, there'd just been a 6-man tag team match. One of the face team and one of the heel team fought to the back, so it left it 2-on-2. And then I come out with Christy. There was 2 guys in the ring, Charlie and James. I took Charlie's head off with a headbutt, and then we both attacked James. Casey Payne runs out to make the save. That save doesn't happen because he turns on them 2, and that's where the Violent Gentleman Society was born from that moment. So it was a cool way to introduce us to the crowd. Yeah, exactly. That's it. It was
and that too. It really does get the crowd into it, because they expected one thing and you subverted the expectation, and that really drives home they just did a lot of bullshit here, and now what do we think about it? And that
it's quite funny because
really kind of catapults you into the story.
Yeah. The funny thing was when the post-show pictures come out, I'll try and dig it out and I'll send it over to you, Paige, just so that you can see it.
Yeah.
Again, this was a couple of years ago now, so if I can find it, I'll send it over. There's a picture of us beating up these 2 guys, and then it cuts to a kid who's maybe no older than 7. A picture of him just like this. And that for us was like, okay,
that's how you know it resonated. Here. You're like, I get that 7-year-old to flip me a bird. He hates me.
Yeah.
Mom, we officially made it.
We've got something here. Yeah. Because I think that when you see the kids in the crowd and that's their reaction, if those parents can see those kids having that reaction, they're gonna go, "Oh, they didn't like that, so I'm not gonna like that," and then it just builds from there. But yeah, that was for me. It's always an image that sort of resonates, because I'm like, okay, that was a cool moment.
Well, for a heel, that's the dream, to get everybody in the place hating your guts. And if you're doing your job right, that is exactly it. And like he said at the top of the show, is like, this is a guy, when I see his heel work, I want to punch him in the face. And that's exactly what you're going for. When you've got that reaction from people, that's the dream,
Yeah, exactly. Again, having never worked heel before, and being in that kind of audience, which was a wrestling audience rather than the carnival audience we were working previously, that for me legitimized us as a group from day one. And it felt like, okay, we've got something special here that we can really, really kick on with.
What's the creative process been since you guys have teamed up over there and gotten the run that you've got? What's the process like? How's it feel working with the bookers? What's the scene like over there when dealing with the office, I guess?
Yeah, so I'll be completely honest, is that from, I'd probably say 90% of the companies that we work for, sort of, we have the main ones we work for are Wrestle Island, Infamous, Off the Page. They're the sort of three ones we're working currently as a big faction. We pretty much have open creative control, and what I say by that is that we don't get to pick the outcomes of the matches because, again, it's you
get to work.
No one does, but we get to do. They'll say, "We want this from you." We've just got to fill the gaps, and that for me has always been something. Again, I go back to when I first started watching wrestling was the stories, and the one thing I will say is that from a wrestling standpoint, is that you will never ever ever get a 5-star match from me ever, but I will entertain you to the point that you think it's a 5-star match. And that for me is what it's all about. I don't think that you need to be the most proficient, being able to do all these flips and things like that. Any story where I can build from, that's what I aim to do. So, as I say, starting off at Wrestle Island, when I headbutted Charlie, that built from that point, from that moment, I sat down with Pete of Wrestle Island and we set out a 12-month feud.
Nice.
From that moment. And we started off, again, all of this can be found. It's so fun for me because it felt like legitimizing myself, and so I've got all of these matches back to back on my YouTube channel. So there was a 6-man tag match that started it. We won by outside interference. There was then a singles match. Yeah. Singles match between me and Charlie. Again, I go over by choking him out. So we then had the following show. Yeah. He challenged me to another match. Challenged me to another match. I said, well, what have I got to prove? I've beat you twice now. I've got no reason to do it. He pushed and pushed and pushed. Yeah, exactly. I said to him, okay, I'll tell you what, if you can beat KC Payne and Christy Quinlan in a match, you can have me one more time. They went over because of cheating. The promoter comes out, says, we're not having this. The match is getting restarted. As me and Casey are celebrating on the ramp, Christy gets rolled up 1, 2, 3. That leaves to me and him having a final blow-off match. I think, Paige, you watched the Gentleman's Code match on stream. Mm-hmm. And this was a creation that I came up with. So it's basically no pinfalls, no submissions. You've got a corner man in each corner. The only way to win is your corner man throws in a towel. The build of the match and the actual match itself, we really, really pushed it as an end of feud match. Highlight packages, all that kind of stuff. The first 10, 12 minutes of the match, he doesn't get a sniff. I absolutely destroy him. And it gets to the point where he has the owner of Wrestle Island in his corner, and I've got the general manager in my corner. But to the heel thing, I actually hit the owner with a steel chair.
Oh.
It takes him out of the match. His wife comes over to check on him.
The towel.
His wife comes over to check on him. I'm choking him out. His wife throws the towel in. I let go of the guillotine. I'm celebrating with the general manager. The referee says, no, she can't throw the towel in. It's got to be the owner. I go round to confront her. Yeah. I go round to confront her. She slaps me in the face. I get speared on the outside by Charlie. He throws me back in, lights me up. We go to the finish. And he goes absolutely crazy with a steel chair on my leg. I think he hits me about 7-8 times with the steel chair on my ankle. puts it over my face, lifts the chair up, gives it that moment for the crowd to really, really reach that point, and then the GM throws in his towel. He's got the big victory, and that was basically planned from day one, from that first initial headbutt to that point. Let's build this, let's go. And that for me is why I enjoy it. I'm not a huge fan of, and again, I'm not against it, but I just feel like going in, wrestling a match, moving on, I don't enjoy it as much as building something. I've always enjoyed the story aspect of things.
We here on the channel are a giant fan of storytelling, especially the long form that takes years to coalesce and really get together. That's one of the things that we always try to talk about with guys we got on the show is that storytelling aspect. It seems like everybody in the business, that's their focus. It's like, I want to tell a good story. I want to tell a good story. I want to get the fans involved and get them connected. And it seems like you've got that same passionate spark for telling that story, which is lovely to me. I love to hear that everybody in the industry wants to tell a good story and get it over.
If you're telling the story, sorry, John, I mean to step on you, but if you're telling a good story, well, then you're selling tickets, and if you're selling tickets, you're making money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's it is.
The whole goal to the industry.
That's it.
And I think that's played, especially at Wrestle Island now, is that we've been there now, I think, coming up to 3 years. It'll be 3 years in September since we debuted. And we've reached a point now where we're still heels, but that crowd is filled with VGS merch. They chant for VGS, even when we're doing our heel shit. You know, we've reached a point now where we've got over, and the only eventual thing we can do is turn face, because
the heroes are only as good as the villains that they face, man. It's just facts.
Yes.
So here's where you play the Austin role, man. You have the Austin-esque turn where you don't change anything about the shtick and roll straight with it. That's crucial and critical. If you can play that and they still buy into it, well, then you're off to the races, man. Like now that opens up several different. Wait, you're cheering for this now? Okay, well. And if you really wanted to be the dicks and the douchebags, when they start chanting for, cheering your shit and whatever they're chanting for, you set it up and you just don't do it. Like, let's just, use like a dusty elbow for a second. Like if they start rallying behind it and you flip flop, you're about to drop the elbow up and you just turn around and walk away. Like, no, I'm not doing it. I think it would be excellent. There's so many different avenues to go down, and that's really a good space to find yourself in as a character, and as being in the ring as a professional, and seeing that you're doing it with some friends of the Violent Gentleman Society, and the story is a constant thing and it's always evolving. That's awesome to hear. As John said it, we're all about the storytelling. I don't give a fuck about when I was in the ring. I didn't give a fuck about winning or losing. I didn't care. Did we get a reaction? Was the crowd, was they invested? Did we have their attention?
Yes.
Did they cheer my opponent? 'Cause I was a heel. Go figure, because I'm an asshole too. Did they cheer me? Did they boo me? Did they boo my, whatever? Did the match get over? If the match got over, then I didn't care, because we're good. The story that we've got you hooked, and if you got you hooked, then you start getting invested, and that's how things start to grow. You've sprinkled the seeds, you've watered the plants, and now it's time for it to grow. And it seems like that's what you're doing over there in the UK right now with the VGS.
It's definitely a work in progress. As I say, we're not countrywide just yet, but we're working towards that as a goal. The guys within VGS. So as I say, we're made up of myself, Christy Quinlan, Casey Payne, and then we've since, in the last sort of 18 months, just shy of 18 months, added 2 new members of VGS as well. So the 4th member of VGS was added during a feud between Christy Quinlan and his brother Padraig Quinlan, both Irish names, but both from an Irish family. So Christy and Pud, as we call him, we're feuding. We did an open challenge at another one of our promotions, Infamous, who I'm part of the creative team now as well. Again, I don't get any say in VGS stuff, but it's one of those things that I help out and give sort of pointers on certain things. And so yeah, we were feuding with. Well, we did the open challenge, and Pud answered it to Christie's anger. Again, Pud at the time was 16. In fact, 16. Yeah, he was 16 when he answered this challenge. Came out. We had. I wasn't involved in the tag match. It was Casey Payne, Christy Quinlan versus Pud, and another one of our sort of veterans from the local scene called Pitbull. We went over due to my interference, taking Pitbull out and Christy pinning Pud. The following show, we did a 6-man tag match of myself, Casey, and Christy versus Pud and another local team called Made to Last. We went over in that one due to our newest member being Stacey Rose, who was our manager, low blowing one of Made to Last. And we went over, I think you watched that as well, I think, a couple of weeks ago on stream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Stacey joined us. Then we really built up the story behind Christy and Pud feuding. That's what the focus was on. And that's another key thing as well, is that in different promotions we're all being given our own spotlight, which is really cool. It's not just I'm the leader, they follow behind me. We all have our own places where we seem to be sort of having the spotlight on us, which is really cool. And we built and to a one-on-one match between Christy and Pud. And the whole time was Christy saying, "You're not ready to do this. You need to go away and come back." They put on an absolute stormer of a singles match, and the show was named "Come At Me, Bro," because it was based around that feud. It was the first half main event. It went. They just, again, I think I've sent you the link page, so again I would highly advise to watch that match. And Pud finally gets one over on his big brother. Their mum was in the crowd. It was quite an emotional moment. Them two having a singles match.
I bet that carried into the fans really well.
Yeah, they really felt the animosity between them. And what was really good as well is the commentators really got over the story as well of why, you're player 1, I'm player 2. You will always have my hand-me-downs. It'll be that kind of thing, and it really sort of built on that. Then later on in the night, we had a 3-way tag team match. Myself, Casey Payne versus Made to Last, and Pitbull and Dave Faulkner, who are the Dogs of War. Now, the Dogs of War earlier in the night got took out the match, so it was just a tag match. Made to Last have obviously been helping out Pud during this feud. We get to the latter stages of the match. Christy's already... Casey Payne got injured, actually, so he couldn't be in the match, so Christy had to do double duty. He really sold the effects of the match with Pud, so I basically had to wrestle 2-on-1 against Made to Last. He was really selling the effects of the match. Every time he got tagged in, he'd do one move, tag himself back out. It was one of those situations where almost we were on the back foot for the first time ever at Infamous Wrestling, so it was just one of those moments. Again, towards the latter stage of the match. Yeah, exactly. And it was weird for them to see us vulnerable because we'd never been in that position before. So gets to the latter stages of the match, referee gets taken out, Casey chucks in his crutch, Pud comes out, grabs hold of the crutch to stop Christy from hitting Made to Last, and then absolutely blasts Made to Last. The crowd goes absolutely nuts. Just didn't see it coming. Pud had really built himself as a really big baby face, finally beating his big brother, and then he joins VGS. We got the win. There was kids screaming, like people genuinely.
Every single one of the fans in attendance.
Oh, absolutely insane. And that for me is probably still my favourite moment of wrestling so far. The reaction we got from that was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And it was just such a cool moment because, again, this is 12 months of storytelling that we'd really built to that moment. And we knew, obviously, we wanted Pud as part of EGS, so Pud and Christy could go and do the tag
just
stuff.
As much as it is the fans. Yeah, this is
exactly
your moment too.
It's hard work, and it's putting in that and making sure it goes right. And that for me is just, again, the most rewarding part of being a professional wrestler, is just that payoff. And then you can start, it's a reset almost, and you go, okay, what next? Let's go again. And that's what I enjoy about it.
Man, that's I love how your brain works when it comes to the business and the industry. You mentioned about helping out with creative. When you're, because of course my ears perk up there because that's where I'm at. Oh, sorry guys, the dogs say hello. Zeus and Hulk say what's happening. It kind of takes me down this direction too, because I'm John and I are both very creative guys. When you say creative and working in creative, hearing how your brain operates with the stories with VGS and etc. Are you obviously you're looking to do that with other people as well, amongst the company that you are doing some creative with? So like what's that look like when you, with your brain and how that operates? Are you planning those long-term stories?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I enjoy most, as I mentioned earlier, is the creative aspect of wrestling. I'm not the most athletic guy, as I said. I'm not going to be able to do crazy shit off the top rope. I'm not going to be able to do handsprings and all that sort of stuff. But it's always been a passion of mine, is storytelling. And I think from a wrestling perspective, there's so many avenues you can go down. And I think a big aspect of putting on a show is making sure that when that night ends, people are talking about at least one aspect of that show. Because I feel like at times I've been to shows in the past where the athleticism is unmatched. Like, it's ridiculous how good they are. But I come away feeling like, oh, do you remember that flippy dude? Do you remember that? And there's no names. And I feel like, for example, in my sort of normal life work, I've worked in customer service pretty much my entire life, and one of the things that always resonates with me is when I've worked in, say, for example, a contact center in the past, one of my managers who I always looked up to, and I've took a lot from since I'm now in management myself, was if I was to call that customer back after your call and ask them what your name was, would they remember it? Because of the service you provided on that call. And it's exactly the same as the service you provide in that ring. If I said to a paying customer, who was that wrestler in the ring who just won? And if they can't name them, it's one of those things that it's...
How important was it really? Yeah.
Yeah. What was the point? Because if you're doing all of that crazy stuff for no reason, then I just don't see the point. You have to connect with the audience on a more of a level than just athleticism. You have to be able to do all the other the crazy shit that comes with it. Yes, that's it. And
but whether again, it be hatred or love or appreciation or something, they need to feel something.
Anything. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that, and I think a lot of the time as well, when you're working this sort of local town shows, and they're not so much dedicated to the bigger, die-hard wrestling fans, the parents are the ones that you want to impress. The kids are already impressed doing what you're doing.
Yep.
They're the ones that are spending the money. They're the ones buying the merch for the kids. They're the ones, coming back the next time. So if you can resonate, my key thing is if I'm working a family-friendly show and I end up on the outside of the ring, if that kid approaches me, I instantly look for the parent to connect with them. Get this little rat away from me now. Get this little, It's that kind of thing where I don't like hitting children, but I'll make him an exception if you don't sit down. It's that kind of thing where...
because the parent has an automatic reaction to that. They feel
like, oh,
so it does
God.
That emotional tie right off rip, yeah.
And that's the sort of reaction that you want from that person, because it's all about making them feel something. And I think, as I say, going back to the creative aspect of it, certain shows do need those types of matches, those crazy spot-filled, nut matches. but I feel like at least half of the card needs to have something that you want to come back for. The bad guy needs to get his comeuppance. The good guy needs to get that big win. That didn't happen tonight. I wonder if it'll happen on the next show. And if it doesn't happen on that show, I wonder if he'll finally beat him on the next show. But it's all about reading the room as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can't let things drag out for too long, because I feel like if you
care.
Exactly, because there's quite a big story on one of our big promotions over here that I feel like that story should have ended 2 shows ago, and it's likely it's going to end in a couple of shows, and it feels like it's been really dragged out for all it's worth, and it's just when this big title change happens and the babyface finally gets the win, feel like it's going to be quite muted because it should have happened 6 months ago, and it's learning from that and being able to say, right, this is we're here now. We've got them here. Let's grab them, because again, it becomes too much for people, I think, and you have to change it up.
You just laid it out. A piece of it's reading the room, and you don't know what that room looks like until you're in the center of it. And you,
Exactly.
as a performer, you know, like, if something's hitting on all cylinders, or do we need to pivot? And if you need to pivot, like, what's your out? So, like, with being creative, and I always have different avenues. So, I was running some creative in the Indies in Alabama back. I mean, where were we at in 2024? So 20 years ago. And some of the stuff that I would look at was, you know, if we're beating somebody, we got to have something to come back on, right? So the storytelling aspect of it. And knowing when that moment is right, and I kind of feel where you're coming from, because sometimes we, as an industry, we get too wrapped up in certain things and realize that maybe we've not listened to our audience. WWE is a prime example. Within, you know, what
They do it a lot.
But it is what it is. They just ignore their audience and they stay the course. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I like the fact that you're one of those guys that if you see something that's not working, you're real quick to try and fix it before it gets out of hand and before it speedballs into, you know, something that could be catastrophic. And I kind of feel bad for whenever this story plays out and the guy wins the championship. If it doesn't go the way that they're expecting it to go, I'd feel bad for him. Because it doesn't hurt anybody but his credibility at that point for not being able to get it done, quote unquote, sooner. And he becomes a scapegoat, kind of, sort of, if you sit back and really think about it. If it doesn't work, well, okay. What are some of the next big pieces of business for you? What are you looking to get out of, like, 2024 with the VGS? And you know, what's your goal here? Coming into 2024.
I think, as I say, we've been a heel faction pretty much everywhere we've been so far, and I feel like, as I mentioned earlier, we've started to get that real positive reaction from the crowd, no matter what we're doing. And I feel like even when we're being absolute dicks, it just doesn't. There's nothing we can do that can get them to boo us anymore. So I feel like the natural thing to do in a couple of the promotions that we're working at the moment is to have a face run, because I feel like at the moment there's a lot of other factions starting to pop up. If we're heels, they're heels. You know, let's change it up a little bit. And again, the key to it, and this is the one thing that I've said to the promoters that we are taking this new direction with, is that we don't change what we've been doing. We still kick people in the dick. We're still horrible. But all it is that we aim it at them rather than the audience. We're still beating the snot out of people. It's just that we're doing it to the people that they hate more. And that's going to be the key to us, I think, in this next year. Is we've recently transitioned at Infamous, so that's one of our home promotions, where it was a 4-way final for their inaugural championship, and one of our members, Casey Payne, made it to the final. I was in his corner, and there's another group, another heel group, that decided to jump me on the outside attacked KC Payne with a pole, and their member of their faction pinned KC Payne. That is enough for us to go, okay, let's fight. That's enough for us to go, let's do this. So we've got, again, without peeling back the curtain too much, we've got some plans in place to, let's build on this. Let's really make this a home run, and I'm excited for that. As far as other promotions, it's just about us. So we've just started working for a company who's only just started, called Off the Page. So we're, again, the big heel faction there. So we've just won a nice big 6-man elimination a couple of weeks back. And the one thing for me as well is that we're yet to be beaten in a 6-man tag team match in nearly 3 years. So, again, want to try and keep that intact as best I can.
Yeah, no shit.
And again, that's the. It's one of those things for me that, again, when it feels right, okay, we can drop this now. And I think that's the one thing, the consistent with VGS, is that any combination of the three of us, we're yet to taste a loss. So that's something that, again, we're trying to preserve as long as possible, but at the same time, when the time is right, let's take the L, let's take this out. And again, that adds to the story of what we're trying to do. The team that finally beats us, that's going to be a huge
credibility.
Moment. So
you got instant cred.
Well, it's going to be a push for them, yeah.
Exactly. It gives a new direction for us to go in then, to say, okay, right, we've took the loss now. Right, let's try and cause some more shit in the background and let's get our revenge back then. And that's the type of thing that we want to be doing, is if we're going to be transitioning to that babyface role, that's going to be the key to us, is being able to push through that. Then we've had a loss, we've never experienced this. How do we then get ourselves back up from this again and build from that and do that kind of thing? But as I say, I'm going to be, for me, taking more creative responsibility at Infamous Wrestling as well. I'm super excited for that. And just try and branch out into a few other promotions. As I say, you've got the Quinlan brothers, who are running themselves as Quintessential. That's under the VGS banner.
Great name.
So it works really well. They've just worked for a massive company called Sovereign Pro Wrestling in Manchester.
Yep, familiar.
Just literally last weekend, and they had an absolute incredible match with against a team called CPF, and it was just a great showcase for them. KC Payne is also working for a company called TNT Extreme Wrestling, which is based in Liverpool. Again, another huge promotion. They have partnerships with GCW and some other companies from the US, which is, it gives the talent the opportunity to move across both promotions, which is awesome. I think Leon Slater went over to GCW last year, and it's that kind of connection that's really, really cool. So, as I say myself, I'm not as active as I'd like to be, but at the same time, again, I have a lot more responsibilities compared to the younger guys, so it does make it a little bit more difficult for me to be able to commit to those. So, again, I don't ever feel this is ever going to be a career for me, but it's one of those things that I'd still enjoy every aspect of what I'm doing right now. And as I say, it's going to be, my main aim for VGS was to give them a platform to kick on from, and I feel like I'm doing that right now.
Well, let me just say this. I'm gonna reveal some behind the curtain stuff, John. I don't even know if I told you this. And this is when I knew just how good of a guy you really are behind the curtain. What people don't get to see often. When I approached him being Tommy, about the show and doing this podcast with us, the answer I got from him, John, I don't know, this may surprise you, may not surprise you. It just made me respect this guy a hell of a lot more. He was like, "Yeah, I'll do it, but can we make it about VGS and use it as a platform?" Absolutely. Like, it wasn't even when approached with a project like this, it wasn't even about himself. The first thing that he came back with was, "Yeah, can we focus on VGS and make sure we talk?" Yeah, absolutely. What's one of those situations that made me respect you that much more as a performer, because it's not about you. It's about the guys that are working
That
around
doesn't
you.
surprise me in the slightest, because when he got the shot to go up to a company, he was like, "Hey, yeah, about these other guys though." So yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It's absolutely a testament to what your intentions are really in the industry, and seeing somebody come up and bringing other people with him. The fact that you're getting involved in creative in the company that you're in, the fact that you guys are working around other promotions. Do you find that the inner promotion thing is made as convenient as possible for the talent? Do you guys see the promotions scheduling on opposite weeks so they don't interrupt with each other? Do they try to share talent conveniently?
It's tough at times. So, for example, at the last Infamous show we had, the Quinlans had to work their match quite early on the card to travel to another promotion that they were working later on in the evening. So they do try. So, for example, Infamous we usually run the evenings, but we had to make it an afternoon show to accommodate the other show that was going on in the Midlands that a lot of the talent were going to. So it was one of those things that a lot of the promotions will work around each other. There are occasions where there may be shows running at the same time, and that can happen. I mean,
logistically, probable. If you have
exactly.
a bunch of promotions working in one space, eventually schedules are going to conflict. But I'm glad to hear that you guys are trying to make that as convenient as possible. We've talked to a lot of guys in different places, and one of the things that we've found to be very convenient for the industry is when these indie promotions can share roster space and really schedule around each other. It seems to do well for the territory, and I call it a territory for a very specific reason. The territories back in the day had a lot of the same talent that would run around in the same space from one fed to another. And we're seeing this resurgence of kind of a territory feel in wrestling. And I, for one, love it. I think that this is the best thing that could happen for the industry. What do you think is something the industry can do, especially now that you're getting into creative and you're starting to work in offices and have networking across different promotions? What do you think is something that the industry as a whole can do? Not just your company and not just the talent, but the entirety of the wrestling business, to move into this new era where there are so many opportunities and so many indies can produce such quality product that it isn't I have to get into the mainstream big company or no one's ever going to see me anymore, because that is definitely the new era that we're in. What's something that you think the industry can do moving forward to really stay ahead of that curve and make it better?
I think for me, now you're always going to have your established guys. I think, the likes of Leon Slater, who's really, really starting to pop off, even in the US now, and he's starting to get a lot of recognition. Obviously, being signed to TNA, he's absolutely fantastic.
I made friends.
He's working for
Tommy. I'm going to step on you. I made friends with North Wrestling this last week. We're sharing some DMs.
Great promotion.
So, and it's all because of doing we did a show on Slater. Ultimately, is what I'm saying. And
a few weeks ago.
They're phenomenal. So I get it. I mean to step on you, but go ahead. I had to throw that little plug.
That's all good. And I think you look at, for example, like the big companies in the UK that I can list off are Rev Pro, Progress Wrestling. Then they're probably your sort of London-based promotions. Start moving up. You've got the likes of TNT. Sovereign Pro, and again, further up more, you've got North, you've got ICW in Scotland, you've got, I think it's, and apologies, in Ireland, I think it's, I can't remember exactly what it is, I think it's OTT, that was it, in Ireland. So I feel like that there's a lot of different, places that, like you say, those big promotions. You look at America, for example, or the States. The main ones are your WWE, AEW, NWA, TNA. But again, NWA used to be a huge thing. It's not so much anymore. It may,
it's making resurgence. It's making resurgence.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that TNA. The first time I watched TNA, I'd not long been with my wife, so it was just shy of 15 years ago. It came on it was a Friday night, we were chilling in bed, and I was flicking through the channels, and I went, what's this? And it was the six-sided ring. It was Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Ultimate X, and I was like, wow, this is really different. And I'd fallen off WWE at the time, and that for me, I was like, wow, this is really cool. Then Hogan comes in, kills the product. It just, and again for me, it went to WWE, and it was just too much of the same shit I'd been watching for the last 5 years in WWE, and it just felt just not as organic, and it didn't feel as new anymore. They went away. They went through the global stuff. They went through Impact, and now they're coming back through to TNA again, and it feels fresh again. It feels new. Now the Scott D'Amore stuff, again, I'm sure you guys might know a little bit more about it than I do.
So aggravated.
A little crazy.
It's odd.
It's a little crazy.
Yeah, he's done all the work. It appears from the outside to really build that place.
Realistically, when you look at the press release and you look at the things that came out about that, it comes down to they're about to take the company in a marketing direction that the board wants, that he wasn't going to be happy with, and he was going to be a loud voice about not doing it. And they're looking at profit margins or making this guy happy. And I think a lot of the bigger companies are looking at that kind of decision right now. It's like, okay, we're building this thing, and these people have done all of this work, but marketing money is becoming involved. And once the company gets to a certain size, marketing money makes the difference. And they've got to make the decision. Do we keep staying the course, or do we take the money? And I would love to see more companies just stay the course and grow their own brand and do their own thing.
Because the money will come naturally then.
Money, right. But they want the fast payday right now. And that's kind of where a lot of corporations are. And I'd love to see the wrestling industry move away from the corporate entities and go back to this kind of territory feel about brand building. And I think that's kind of what the indie scene is doing right now. And I love to see that, because it's really building. Like, you look at here in the States, MLW and Ohio Valley, and there's a bunch of people that are reality of wrestling. There's a lot of companies out here that are building their own markets.
Is it WoW as well? Is it Women of Wrestling as well? That's another promotion that's getting like YouTube contracts and stuff like that. And but again, going back to what you're saying though, is that I feel like with the likes of like Leon Slater and people like that who are really moving about and really sort of getting their names up there, you have to have those people. I think the way to improve it is the first part of your card should be fresh talent as best as you can. Give them a platform. The ones that you think resonate, keep them. Ones that don't, keep them in the background. Get them working ring crew, but have it as a feasible option. I feel like once you have ring crew set in place with a lot of places, they're like, we don't need anybody else. These are the guys we're going to take with us. I think there needs to be more of an open opportunity to be able to get into different promotions. I feel like there's a lot of set rosters. The one other thing as well, I feel like for the bigger companies as well, they need to check some egos, and that's both in the ring and also...
That's the entire industry and always
as a whole. The one thing that I always say to people, and it's like, I'm not taking a loss to this guy. I've been wrestling, this long. It's fucking fake fighting at the end of the day. Get over yourself. We're literally throwing ourselves on the floor for pennies. Get over yourself.
Well, and I think, too, a lot of times, like, the supporting characters are not always given the opportunity to make a name for themselves either, but yet through history of wrestling, we've seen ring announcers and commentators and referees, and we've seen those characters get really big spots and important storylines that have gotten over with the fans. It doesn't matter who you are or what you've done, you're in the business, and everybody's job should be to tell the story. I think a lot of times that gets lost on people, and they want to be the famous guy. And like you said, check the ego at the door. This is an industry where it's about getting the company, the brand over, and getting those tickets sold, not just getting your name up at the top of the marquee. And I think that's a key factor. And I really think that with this new territory era that indies are going through, this is becoming more prevalent. And
Agreed.
like you said, having more companies running big shows is a way to have more opportunities for people coming up to find a way into the business. And I think you're
Yep.
right. I think that having those opportunities and seeing, not just the cream of the crop rise to the top, but seeing everybody that could get in a ring, you might find the diamond in the rough that would never get an opportunity. And I think that's a big key for the future of the industry too. And I think we're headed that direction.
I hope so, and I think another big thing as well that I feel that the industry as a whole struggles with is not even so much in-ring talent. It's if someone doesn't have, if they know I can't do this, it's too tough on my body, but you know what? I really fancy being a referee. How do I become a referee? How do I become a ring announcer? How do I become a cameraman? How do I become, how do I become a music technician? How do I do this? How do I do that? All those different things that make up a show that, are not just in-ring performers, putting up the ring, stuff like that is just that not many people know how to address that kind of thing. And I think that's such a key component to what we do as performers is that if that ring doesn't go up, we've got no ring to perform in. If that music doesn't play, we look really awkward coming out. If we've got no referee, there's no one
there's
to
no match. Yeah,
there's no match.
Without a ref.
That's it. And I feel like that a lot of these bigger promotions that run, it's hard to break into that without having something pop off on Twitter or something goes viral on TikTok, or this is the thing, is that a lot of these guys are being booked not necessarily on their wrestling ability or how to tell a story. They're booked because something popped off on social media, and that's the thing as well, is that there's a lot of guys who are being booked for not necessarily the right reasons, but just to feed the promoters' pockets, and that's the thing, is that there's a lot of guys who are really, really working hard and people getting booked for the wrong reasons.
Well, this is one of the reasons that we do the shows that we do. We do indie spotlights on Mondays so that we can look at indie promotions that are really doing something out there with quality production and quality talent. We're doing the spotlights on individuals. We're doing these interviews to really get those across. And maybe we get to find the next big things. And that's what we've been looking for months. And that's how we got tangled up with you. It's how we got tangled up with all the other guys that have been kind of floating through our channel. It's really an interesting build, and to see the industry in the state that it's in kind of makes me happy. I love seeing the ability to have an indie promotion anywhere become a big deal in the industry, and for other people to see it and be like, oh, there's guys all over the place that are getting opportunities that they never would have had a decade ago.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that there is so much more, and I guess it's like the music industry as well in a way, because a lot of these artists now that are becoming the biggest superstars in the world
completely
are because they posted
talents. Yeah, completely.
They posted a video on Twitter, and that's literally how you get across. And what I was saying before about people not being sort of necessarily deserving of being there. There's a lot of guys. I'd probably say 90% of the guys are being booked through social media for the right reasons. Maybe 10% are getting booked just to add some cash to the promoter's pocket. But, I think if you can build that in a way that entertainment factor, ability, and build a show on that stuff, you've got a recipe for success. It is getting asses in seats. Again, even a couple of weeks ago at the Sov Pro show, we had a soap actor do a big, huge segment at Sov Pro, and there was a skit NWO moment, and it was the moment of the show. That guy has never stepped foot in a wrestling ring in his life. He was just an actor on a TV show in the UK, but he got such a reaction because of he accepted the promotion. He wanted to be a part of the show, and that for me was like, okay, that's entertaining. And again, you've got guys who go there just for the paycheck, don't care, sign things, throw it at you, not really bothered. He really got involved, and as long as you put, the effort and the heart into what you're doing, and it adds to the product, I'm all for it.
I got one question for you because I can't ignore it any further. How big of a horror buff are you? Elm Street, Camp Crystal Lake, Bates Motel behind you, hanging up on the wall. What's the story with that?
Yeah, I'll be dead honest. Up until I met my wife, I couldn't fucking stand horror movies. I hated them. I was a big baby, wouldn't watch them, thought they were too scary. And the first horror movie I ever watched was Scream. Again, classic, slasher movie, and I thought this isn't as bad as what I thought. And then my wife showed me House of a Thousand Corpses.
Rob Zombie's whole series is good.
Yeah, and from that moment I was like, this shit is legit. Like, it's a huge love of mine now. It's part of my everyday life. Even at points, I've used, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the band Ice Nine Kills. A lot of their stuff is based around horror movies. I've been really into them. I was even going to use one of their songs as my theme at a point because I was going to change direction to a more of like a horror movie slasher kind of thing.
Does that play into your character?
Yeah. But the issue is that there's a guy who works the area that I work, and he has a very similar character style. So I didn't want to tread on his toes too much. So I've just sort of clawed that back, and I'm sort of back in the drawing stage again. But it was definitely something that I considered. But yeah, I think horror movies now are just, again, they're just a huge part of my life, and it's I'm definitely a classics guy, as you can see behind me.
Yep. You have all the good classics.
Yeah, there's more as well, but they keep falling down, so I just keep them 4 up because they stay up. So, but yeah, I think I love Rob Zombie's movies, his takes on the Halloweens. Again, because they felt like the old classics when they were made, with again the good old Rob Zombie spin on them. But yeah, I've always been, in the last sort of 10 years, I've really developed a love for horror movies.
And I know that you're a streamer. Do you ever stream horror games?
No, because I just have this horrible feeling of playing one and just going viral for the complete wrong reasons.
I was wondering, do you have any interesting scares?
Yeah, no. I'll be dead honest. As I say, a lot of the stuff I do, I think at most I'll play maybe The Last of Us or something along those lines.
Well, if any of your community is watching this video, I'm pushing them right now. Go out there and petition for Jackson here to start doing some horror movie stuff and some horror games. Maybe
Stop it, John. Stop it. Stop it. Don't lead him down that trail. Don't do this.
It's entertaining.
No.
Be gone, devil.
I tell you what, if there's enough demand when it gets to October, I may do a horror month. But that's about it, really.
You heard.
But you can hold me to that. You can hold me to that. But I'll be honest, again, with a lot of the games I play, a lot of them are story based. Like, I enjoy the stories of games. I'll play, the odd sports game here and there. I'm not big into Call of Duty or anything like that because I just don't understand it. If I'm honest, it's not ever. I've tried it and gone, that's not for me. But yeah, my favorite games, I would say, are probably The Last of Us, LA Noire, if you ever played that. Anything that's got a real sort of A to Z kind of story that you can sort of jump and it goes in different directions. But yeah, anything like that has a story. But again, I don't also like the horror games where you have to choose which direction you go, and it like takes you on a different. It's not. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not as fun, I guess, to play. I just feel like if I want to watch a movie, I'll watch a movie.
Did you ever get to play Being Human?
I did not know, and I feel like I've been told to do that. That and God of War as well. Apparently is a really good story that I need to pick up on. But primarily on my Twitch channel. We watch a lot of wrestling, to be fair, whether it be reacting to VGS stuff. Yeah, and that's how this has come about. So, but again, it's mainly I've got partnerships with a few English promotions, Progress Wrestling, and a lot of the promotions I work with. So I get to show their stuff on my streams, which is pretty cool. And again, it's just given me the opportunity to network with some certain people that I probably would never have had the opportunity to before.
So Twitch has been so crazy. Just in that same vein, like the amount of people that you network with. What's been your biggest growing pain as a streamer? Like, what's the thing that you've kind of had to figure out from day one? Like, what's the big deal for you? Like, you finally got the piece together, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's what it's about.
I think it's still a work in progress, but I think initially it was just understanding how to work things. I'm not a big sort of IT guy, if I'm honest. So it was
page must fix.
Yeah, exactly. So even now, like I'll have my streams and something will go wrong, and I'll go, I'll fix that tomorrow. I can't be bothered with that. And it
knows that every stream is gonna have something happen. It's guaranteed.
It's a joke on my channel.
Whether it's the sound not working, the microphone switching off, and I literally sat and talked to my stream. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. And I wasn't really looking at the chat. I was just sort of chatting away, telling them about my week and stuff. And then I just looked down, and everyone was just saying, "Can't hear you, can't hear you, can't hear you." Are you a real
streamer? Like, you haven't started a stream with your mic off? I mean, really?
The worst part was the mic was in front of me, and like my mic, I'm not sure if you can see, has like a little light on there. But that also controls the mute. So if you accidentally touch that, again, I'll just quickly show you.
Yeah.
It goes red. I didn't notice it was on red. So I think I'd adjusted it, put my finger on it, switched it off, and I was like, so, how's everyone's been? Going away.
And it was just
today? Yeah. I was like, this chat's being a bit rude, not really saying a lot to me. What's going on? But again, it's I think the biggest thing is finding what you're comfortable streaming. And I think a lot of people stream because, this is popular over here, or this game's popular, so I'll do this. This will get the most likes, this will get the most views. I do it because I just enjoy hanging out, and it's a good way for me to de-stress from work and life, and I get to watch some cool wrestling, because again, it's quite ironic that I've probably watched, up until I started streaming again, I've probably watched the least amount of wrestling since being a wrestler in the last couple of years, because it's just not appealed to me. Where I've since found a real big love for UK independent wrestling. I love Japanese wrestling, and again, I'll throw in there the odd WWE match, odd AEW match that people are talking about, and I'll check it out. But unless again it really pulls me in, I won't then continue watching the product, because it's just not enough for me to go, that was a cool match, I wonder what they're going to do next. There's still not been those moments where I feel like with Japan, for example, they always have, especially in the title matches, as soon as the title match is over, their next challenger's out there asking them for a match. And it's always got that nice little flow to it to go, okay, now they're building over here, let's move on. And I feel like the product in Japan just feels more real. Like, it feels like there's a fight aspect to what's going on.
The Japanese product has always had that in spades.
Yes.
It's been a very solid product.
As soon as the match is over, they're in there with the ice packs, they've got the medics out there. It makes it feel like it's a prize fight, like you see in boxing, like that kind of thing happens.
Your corner guy's always got that ice bucket and the water bottle. Yeah, they've got a different feel for the product. Yeah,
it makes it feel like a fight, and that for me is what I enjoy most. It makes it's entertaining, but it also has that aspect of surprise. I think a lot of the time as well, WWE, sometimes you feel like you can just sort of cut through it with a knife and just be like, this is where they're going with that. This is what's going to happen. It's very rare you ever get that swerve. Do you find yourself
doing that when you're watching a match? You're like, oh, I could see this spot happening, because I find myself calling spots early all the time.
I overanalyze everything now, and I sometimes need to take myself away from the wrestler aspect to just sit back and go, let me just enjoy the match. Like,
it's a daily
brain,
struggle.
Please switch off.
It's
Yeah,
a daily.
you're just like, please
that's
switch
really
off.
hard.
I just want to watch it. Yeah, and I think that is probably the most difficult aspect of being an in-ring performer, is being sat there going, oh, they fucked that up. Oh, they need to be over there. They need to move. And you're just like watching everything else happen rather than just being like enjoying it on face value for what we enjoyed
I think that
when we
gives
started
us-
watching wrestling.
I think that gives us, you, me, him, and all of us an interesting perspective, and I think it's one of the things that our communities come to our channel for, because we have been in the ring and we do see those things. We do talk about it on the channel constantly. Do a botch while we're watching a match, and we're calling the shit out of it. But we're also talking about your recovery effort and how that could have been this, but instead it turned into this. You know, like, so I think that gives us a unique perspective, and it's one of the things that our communities come and really watch us for, is because we do have that insight. And it does make it hard for people like us to watch the product, because we see all the things and we know the mentality that's going into it. And sometimes wrestling just doesn't make a lot of sense, and we have to kind of make sense out of it sitting here in commentary. And that's kind of our job, looking at it from the outside. And it's interesting that you say that too, because I know that I struggle constantly watching the product and not being so over analytical that I'm like, oh, this could have been this or that. And it's interesting to hear other people also have that perspective.
Do you know what a big thing for me is as well, and again it fits into what we're saying here, is that I myself am my own worst critic, and I think that's the same for everybody. You always overjudge every little thing that you do, and there's been points where I've been wrestling in front of, you know, my friends or my family, and I've come away from the ring and I've gone, oh, that was awful. Like that, I felt it just didn't feel right. You know, the match didn't flow well. A spot went wrong. You go back and my wife goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, it was just." She went, "What's wrong with it? It was great." You know, and I think from a wrestler's perspective, you always strive to be that perfectionist, but
It'll never
from a
happen.
crowd perspective, they don't know that wasn't supposed to happen. And I feel like letting go of that has probably been the biggest positive sort of thing I've done for myself in the last sort of 6 months, because I was so over critical of my own performance all the time. Like, again, Paige, as you say, you know, you've really enjoyed my heel work. I don't even know I'm doing it half the time. It's just natural. And it's that letting go of that and not being, I have to be a heel now, that allows me to be able to perform to the best of what I can. As I say, I'm never going to be a great over-the-top worker who can really put on clinics in a ring, but I just want to entertain people. And as long as I can come away from that show and those fans come up to me and go, "You were amazing, really enjoyed you tonight," that I should be happy with that and take that away. And they're the things I need to be retaining in my brain, because there's been points where I've come away from shows and it's on my mind for 2-3 weeks post-show, you know, and you get so
That's a toll
up about it. It's horrible. You know, I've had sleepless nights over matches and things, and I think to myself, why am I doing this to myself? You know, and there's been points where I think, I can't do this anymore. It's too much. And then as soon as that music hits again and I go again, it just disappears. That feeling just disappears, because there's no
passion.
feeling of it. Yeah, that's it. And there's no feeling like it, that being in that ring, being in front of a crowd, whether you're a good guy, a bad guy, you know, whatever it might be, as long as you can go away and that crowd is happy, then you should be happy, and that's what it comes down to.
I completely agree. I think everybody on our channel here is like a wrestling. We just like wrestling, and really,
Exactly.
You were talking earlier about, you know, when you're streaming on that platform, finding what content works for you. Like when we got started, we were doing WWF house shows and shit like that. And I mean, I really feel like
before that, there was a lot before that too that built on what we were doing. It wasn't even about real wrestling; it was just stuff.
And you know, I think we found our stride with the independent stuff. These shows I really enjoy doing, and I told John and everybody all the time, the reason I do these shows, I like watching you and the Violent Gentleman Society. I know what I'm getting when I'm watching the matches, right? well, as far as what you guys are doing, but what I look for is who's next. Who are you in the ring with that can keep up and that tells a good story, that has good ring work, that is, somebody that we need to look deeper into. And then we start pulling some matches for Wrestling Request Live, slide them in under the radar or something else, put them on the channel, see what the viewers think about it. And then if they, you know what I mean, it's just like a snowball effect. And I think that
of course it is.
Where we're headed is really in great places, and I thank Twitch very much, because had Twitch not been a thing, I may not have come across you, and coming across you has led to the Violent Gentleman Society. It's like that trail starts, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's going to lead us to other people. That's the thing about wrestling that I dig the most, and I say it on the streams all the time. It brings people together. It brings everybody together.
It does.
We share. I hope she doesn't mind. We have a mutual friend as far as in the streaming world that visits our channels that loves the Japanese product. I won't drop her name just in case, but we call her our Japanese correspondent, because she's keeping us up to date on.
She's got her finger on the pulse and what's going on in Japan.
And she knows who she is at this point. So if I would have had permission, I would have said names, but I'm not doing that. And I just know that that's another thing that gets me off about wrestling now is it just brings people together from all aspects and across the world, across the globe. We share our passions for what we're doing, and it's just a small piece of it, dude. And I think that everything that you're doing is great. I think that you've got a brain for the industry and how it works. And ultimately, as long as your eye stays on the prize, I think that you're going to probably get everything that you want. I dig the fact that you've got the opportunity now to show how creative you can be with the confines of a product. Whether it's just a voice in the room pitching ideas, et cetera, because once those ideas start catching, let's use the idea for the Violent Gentleman Society, your 1 year storyline, you kind of put it together that night. You do that with somebody else, with 2 other people, not necessarily maybe on that level of a year, but you start getting that reputation for being a guy that can generate stories on the scene that generate ticket sales. You never know. Ultimately, is what I'm getting at. You don't know where that road leads to, and I think that that's fucking awesome. On top of everything else that you got going on, I don't know. It. I just you have knocked me out today on this interview, and didn't even mean to do it. John, what else do you have for Tommy?
Realistically, brother, I just appreciate the time that you've taken to talk to us today and shed some light on the UK market and what the industry is doing over there and what you guys have going on. And to see somebody so humbly pushing other people when you had an opportunity to take the ring and run with it, you didn't just take it, you hooked other people up to it and brought them up too, is awesome to see someone in a position that you're in the industry really pushing other talent who deserves a spot, and to all ships rising together, is the way that everything else builds. And to see someone getting opportunities like you, and to be able to get involved in that creative work and to see where you end up down the road, like we definitely want to circle back in a couple of years and see maybe your head booking it somewhere or something else. maybe the career trajectory isn't in ring, maybe it's in the office, and using that skill set that you have to tell stories and really increase the industry. Or maybe it is in the ring, maybe you blow up, maybe you're the next guy. But somewhere down the road, to see that you've made it a successful thing and your endeavors have paid off is what this industry is about, and having Cinderella stories like yours is amazing. So we appreciate you being on the show with us and spending some time with us today and kind of sharing what your journey's been like, so that we can promote you and the market that you're in and the guys that you're bringing up with you.
No, I appreciate it, gents. As I say, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. It's again, from a random Twitch raid, and it's come to this. So again, thank you so much for having me on, and it's definitely, as I say, going back to what you were just saying then, it's all about, for me, that let's see where this goes, and if it is back office stuff, I'm perfectly happy with that. If it's in ring stuff,
I'm sure your wife
great.
would appreciate it if you worked in the office.
Yeah. I think that's definitely. I think she would definitely prefer that. And again, being able to work with the people I get to work with. I've shared the ring with someone I've wanted to a couple of weeks ago for the first time, and it's things like that. I've got a few things that I need to tick off before I go riding off into the sunset. So I've got some goals that definitely need to be achieved before I go anywhere. But yeah, you'll be seeing a little bit more of me before I put on my big boy pants and sit in the back room anyway, at least.
Good. We're glad to hear that.
I think this is going to be great, and really and truly, what's really kind of impressive too is you're talking. You've only been doing this for like 4 years now, actually actively in the ring, and if here you are 4 years later, where you're going to be in the next 4 years, I think that the proof is going to be in the pudding. I think that you'll rise to the occasion. You'll knock it out of the park. I have a good feeling about this.
I appreciate it.
Tommy, you got anything you want to say to the people on our channel before we tie a bow on
it? Yeah. If you want to follow the socials, link is, I believe, just below. All of my social media is the same. TommyJacksonPW. Again, the guys, they've all got really strange Twitter handles and stuff for VGS. So I'll send them over to Paige. You can put them below because I don't remember them off the top of my head.
Down in the list.
Yeah, down below.
Everything VGS and Tommy Jackson, look down below. That's going to be Twitch. There's going to be all the socials, the merchandise store, the VGS stuff. It can ship worldwide. And the beautiful thing about professional wrestling and supporting independent wrestling is you don't have to do a whole lot to support. Follow him on the socials. Go over to his YouTube page. Give him a subscribe there. Anything and everything that's free, do it. And share your shit. But go ahead, man. That's the easiest way to support. If you can get a shirt, get a fucking shirt. But if not, word of mouth is everything. And if you can promote, that's the easiest way and the free form of doing it.
Agreed.
John, take us home.
Well, guys and gals, as you have heard from all of us, the link's down below. Follow all the stuff over for VGS and Thomas Jackson. We've got all kinds of things coming out on the channel at all times, guys. You know where those savage elbows go, right there in the ding bell, so you never miss a beat of what we got going on behind the curtain, beyond the bell, anywhere in particular that's under the ring. We've got all kinds of new stuff coming out all the time, guys. We love sharing our passion for the industry with you. As always, we love each and every one of your faces, and we'll see you again next time.